And what I want to talk about first, before we start to bring in Apple Loops and actually create music, is the user interface. What you're actually looking at, sometimes called the GUI or the graphical user interface. The user interface allows you to manipulate the software. I always, like when I talk to my students, I talk about the user interface kind of like getting in one car that you drive all the time and then you go and drive another car. You know how to drive a car. Let's say, for instance, if you're coming from a different DAW, you know pretty much how DAWs work, digital audio workstations. If you've used any other platform, they all work kind of the same way. But the buttons and the controls are in different places. Like if you drive one car, the button to roll the windows up may be in the middle where your armrest is and the gear shift is, as opposed to on the door. Or the signal light may be on one side versus the other. So in order to be efficient, and I always encourage people to be efficient and create quality products with their DAW, you really need to know where things are and how they're laid out. So let's talk really quickly about what is happening here. So this is what's called the main window, the entire screen that you see here. Matter of fact, I've got an application that I meant to turn on. Let me turn it on so I can let you kind of focus on where my mouse is at specific points. That's better. Okay, so this entire screen is called the main window. Everything that you're seeing on my screen right now, that is considered the main window. And the main window in its default configuration has 3 specific areas. So when you first open it up, it basically has 3 areas that I want to focus on today. The first of those 3 areas is this part across the top, this light gray area that goes all the way from one side to the other. This is called your control bar. Now, the control bar consists of a lot of different things. It has buttons that allow you to actually show or hide other areas of your main window. It has your transport section, which allows you to manipulate or move your transport position or your playhead position to stop, record, play, fast forward, rewind, things of that nature. You have what's called the LCD, and the LCD gives you information about your position in the song. By default, it's showing basically where you are in bars and beats. So if I move my playhead here, you'll see the LCD update to where I am in bars and beats. Now you can customize that, which we'll do later. It also shows you the tempo of your project, the key signature of your project, and the time signature of your project. To the right of that, you have some other controls that allow you to turn on specific features like cycle. This is really cool. If you create an audio track and you got a guitar plugged into it, you can actually click this and tune your guitar. You can actually tune your vocal too if you know what you're doing, and you can hold a perfect note, which I can't, so I'm going to turn that off. There's some other features here. This is your count in. For when you hit record, it'll give you a count in. You can adjust it or turn it off completely, and this is your click or your metronome. To the right of that, we have our master fader, which we'll come back to and deal with in a second. And then over here, we have 4 additional buttons that allow you to access other windows that'll pop up on this side. So let me just speak specifically about certain things that I want you to know about that are in the control bar, and then I'll show you how to customize it. So this first button here allows you to access your library. Your library is a section that allows you to access what are called patches in Logic. The patches are specific to what kind of track you have selected. So on an audio track, I will get different types of patches that show up here than I would if I created a software instrument track, which I just did. So now this is a software instrument track, and you can see that my library actually dynamically updated to create, to show me patches available for a software instrument track. I'm going to get rid of that. We'll talk more about the library later because it's a little bit more involved in that as far as what shows up there based on what it's pointing to. But that's your library. I'm going to hide the library. As a matter of fact, here's your first shortcut. You can hide the library with the key command Y, and that will toggle your library on and off. The next button shows the second area of your main window. So remember, the first area is the control bar. The second area is this over here on the left. Let me do this. So this whole section from the top to the bottom here is called your inspector. Okay, your inspector gives you a couple of things. It gives you the channel strip from your mixer for the selected track that you have. So this track is selected right now. It's the only track that we have in our project. It's an audio track. This is the actual channel strip for the mixer for that audio track. So I can do anything that I could do on that channel strip in the mixer, I could do here. All of my inserts or audio effects, my input, my output, sends, all of that type of stuff I can access right here. This second channel strip to the right is the routing for this channel strip. So because this channel strip is routed right here, it's showing me that it's going to my stereo output. If you look at the name of this second channel strip, it is the stereo output. So it shows the routing for this track, and that can change. If I had a send going to an auxiliary, I could click on the send, and then this would show me the auxiliary channel strip tied to that channel strip. Up here at the top of the inspector, I have my region parameters, which we'll spend a little bit of time with today, and track parameters also. Now, sometimes these can be folded so you won't be able to see the details, but you can click these disclosure triangles to open them so you can see the information that's there. Now, the next button shows a hidden area in your control bar, under your control bar, called the toolbar. If I click this, you'll see the toolbar pop up underneath the control bar. The toolbar gives you access to things that you may use often, and it has suggested things like track zoom, note repeat, spot erase, nudge values, and things of that nature. But you may not use any of those. So if it's your toolbar, you may want to customize it so you can put things there that you use a lot based on your type of production. And you can customize the control bar and the toolbar just by holding down control and clicking on either. So if I control click in the gray area on the toolbar, I get this that says customize toolbar. And if I click that, then this window pops up. Now, everything that has a check mark beside it is actually what's showing up right now in my toolbar. But I can actually change that. So let's say, for instance, I don't use track zoom. So I can uncheck track zoom and say I want to add bounce. Now, I bounce things a lot. When I finish a project, I can easily access it from my from my toolbar. If I want to restore the defaults, go back to what it was when you open Logic, I could just hit this button right here, and now I'm back into my default control. I keep getting them mixed up. My default toolbar section. So I'm just going to say okay to that. To hide your control bar, your toolbar, you can either click this button or you can use this shortcut. Here's your second shortcut: Control, Option, Command, and T. That's all three modifiers by the space bar and T. That'll toggle your toolbar. I said you could also customize your control bar. If you control click here, you can customize your control bar. And I said I was going to come back to this master fader here. This master fader is the actual master fader from your mixer. And I like to hide it because I don't want to be tempted to move it. Right now it's at unity, meaning it's really not doing anything. It's letting the signal pass the same way it came in. It's going out. And that's how I want it to stay. So I usually hide that by control clicking to customize my toolbar, my control bar, and going to the bottom here and unchecking the master volume. And now it's hidden. All right. I failed to mention the shortcut for your inspector. So I'll give you several shortcuts because I think shortcuts make you efficient. The inspector, the letter I. Makes sense, right? You can see an I up here to hide and close it, but also on your keyboard, the letter I will toggle it, open and close. The next button may be very helpful to you as a Logic beginner. It's called Quick Help. So when you click Quick Help, I had to pause so I can get that out. Wherever you place your mouse, it will give you information as to what it is that you have your mouse over. So if I put my mouse here, it tells me that that is the duplicate track button. And then it gives me a description. It says create a new track with the same configuration as the selected track. So now I know exactly what that button does. Well, what's this button? Oh, that's your add tracks button. Anywhere you place it, it will give you information about what you actually have your mouse over. So it's very helpful if you're new to Logic and you're trying to figure out like what all this stuff is and what it does, no matter where you place it. I'm going to be honest, I don't like it because it's always in my peripheral and I know where things are. So as I'm working, something's always happening over here. So I hide it. But as a new person working in Logic, I would advise you to kind of use it to your advantage. You can always toggle it off when you don't want it. So I'm going to turn it off. Now, I won't talk about all of these buttons here because they'll come more apparent as we go through the course. But these basically allow you to open up editors that pop up at the bottom of the screen. The main one I want to talk about is the button that's here in the middle, which will allow your mixer to show up down here in the bottom half of your screen under, by the way, the third area of your main window, which is the tracks area. That's this big area here. Let me close out the mixer. So this big area here is called your tracks area. That's the third area. The first area was the control bar at the top. The second area was the inspector here. And then the third area is your tracks area. Now they don't have a order, if you will. So this could be the first area, second area, third area. But those are your three areas that show up in your main window in its default configuration. The shortcut for your mixer to show up down here at the bottom of the screen is the letter X. When you hit the letter X, it'll show up. Sometimes the mixer is great here at the bottom of the screen, but sometimes a floating mixer like this is better, especially if you have multiple monitors. So if you want a floating mixer, you can either go to the window menu here and go down to say open mixer, or as I just did, I used the shortcut, which is Command 2. One thing I always tell people, don't keep hitting Command 2, because every time you hit Command 2, you get another one and another one. So to close those out, Command W, Command W, Command W, which will bring me back to this. If I actually wanted to toggle back and forth between a floating mixer and my main window, I could use Command and what's called the tilde key, or the key right up under the escape that looks like a sine wave to me. So Command, and that will toggle me between those two windows. Okay, I'm going to close that out. We'll come back and talk about the transport more, and we'll talk more about the LCD in a little bit. I want to kind of move over here to these 4 buttons because they open up a different portion of your main window. So if I click on this button, this will allow me to see my event editor and different editors that I have here, or different lists. So this is my events list. More on that next week when we're dealing with MIDI. Markers list. If we wanted to populate the project with markers, we can go over here and edit the markers or see information about them. Tempo information, if we create tempo changes, probably more on that next week when we do some MIDI. And time signature and key signature list shows you different time signature or key signature changes that you have in your project. We will come back to this later on. The next one is your notes, and this allows you to add notes about the project. So if you save this project and you want to send it to somebody else to work on, you can actually put project notes in here, or you can put notes about specific tracks that talk about maybe processing that you used or a particular technique that you may have used on a particular track. We're going to come back to this button in 1 second because that's where our Apple loops are, and we'll spend a lot of time in there. And the last one I want to get to is the browsers over here on the far right-hand side. The browser section gives you 3 tabs at the top. When you're in the project browser, this allows you to see any media, audio, or MIDI regions that you've imported into your project will show up here. It will give you information about the parent file, if it's an audio file that's on the computer, and all of the regions that that come from that parent file. Media allows you to access your iTunes, and also if you click on movies, your iMovie library, to actually just bring those files right from that library into Logic so you can work on it. And then all files is basically a finder window inside of Logic that allows you to access your hard drives, servers, or anything that you have connected to the computer to bring in files. And also allows you to get right inside your project folder here. Okay. So let me close. Apple Loops. So Apple Loops is where we're going to spend the majority of our time today. The letter O on your keyboard is the shortcut for Apple Loops. And that makes sense, right? That's the wrong shortcut. O. Because O is a loop. So you think O, you think loops, Apple Loops. And so we're going to spend a lot of time looking over here for loops that we're going to use inside the project. So let me just check to see if there are any questions so far. That's kind of a brief overview of the interface. And now we're going to actually start to work and start to pull in some Apple Loops. So it looks like no questions so far. So cool. Okay.